Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden has held talks with the Finnish President Sauli Niinisto and Swedish Prime Minister Magdalena Anderson. The two countries have started a process to join NATO, as we've just been reporting, and the alliance has condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
NATO's door remains open. In just a few minutes, I'll be leaving to spend time with two of our Indo-Pacific allies. Within a half hour or so, I'll be flying to the Republic of Korea and Japan. I thank the President and the Prime Minister for traveling here on for this meeting before I take off, because it is so important. America's alliances in Europe and in Asia keep us, and I would argue, the world strong and secure. They're how we confront the challenge of our time and deliver for our people today and harness opportunities for better tomorrow.
It is time for NATO allies to weigh in. We hope for strong support from all allies and for a swift ratification of our membership once it's agreed. I believe that the United States can set a crucially important example to others. The Turkish leadership has recently expressed concerns about our membership application. I want to address these concerns today. Finland has always had broad and good bilateral relations to Turkey.
Yesterday, Sweden and Finland submitted our formal requests to join NATO. And Russia's full-scale aggression against a sovereign and democratic neighbor, that was a watershed moment for Sweden. And my government has come to the conclusion that the security of the Swedish people will be best protected within the NATO alliance.
Well, for more on this development, we're now joined by Eoin McNamara, who's a visiting research fellow at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, and he's on Zoom from Helsinki, the capital of Finland. Eoin, thanks very much indeed for joining us. What is the feeling like in Finland at the moment about this prospect of joining NATO, or do the citizens not care that much?
No, the citizens here certainly care a lot about joining NATO. There is a sense in the air after Russia's full-scale military assault on Ukraine after February 24th that Finland's security needs to be locked down solidly, and we've had a paradigm shift in the security of Northern Europe, and the strength of NATO's collective defence and its deterrence is required to make sure that Finland's security is strengthened into the future. So that is very, very important for the Finnish public, and it's Finnish public opinion that has driven this process since February 24th.
How is it that Finland has been able to remain neutral for so long?
Well, Finland has always been very, very good, probably the primary state in Northern Europe for managing its relations with Russia. It, of course, fought two wars after its independence with the Soviet Union, the Winter War in 1939 and the continuation war after that. And to retain its sovereignty throughout the Cold War, it stayed neutral, tried to balance its relations between East and West. But it dropped its neutrality in 1995 when it joined the European Union and tried to accommodate Russia with military non-alignment. But now, Russia, it is perceived from Helsinki that Russia is no longer taking calculated risks. We do not know where the limits of Russian aggression are. Finland does not want to be next, and NATO's preventative deterrence is seen as the best insurance policy against any future Russian aggression that Moscow can wield.
So we've been getting mixed messages coming out of Russia. First, we heard I think the Deputy Foreign Minister pretty much say that there'll be severe consequences if these two countries move forward. Then we heard Vladimir Putin saying, no, he has no worries about it. But if arms and weapons start to be based in Finland, then there would be a cause for concern. Is this something that Finland will have to take in, or are they going to rely on NATO to protect them?
Well, mixed signals is definitely correct, and Russia is constantly giving mixed signals. That's where a lot of Russia's power is based. Unpredictability. It likes to have its finger on the thermostat. But of course, we must remember that Finland, particularly, but also Sweden, has always been a very, very strong lock militarily in Northern Europe. For a country of 5.5 million people, Finland has a very strong military, a professional corps, 22,000, a direct reserve backing that up, 280,000, which they can mobilize from their reserve, and another reserve behind that of 900,000. And when they mobilize the 280,000 reserve, they have the strongest artillery system in Europe, or the strongest artillery force in Europe. So Finland has always been a very strong lock. It will not be a free rider in NATO, and I don't think NATO will perceive any need for very significant military reinforcements from within the alliance in either Sweden or Finland. There might be a bit of command and control to coordinate communications and logistics that can help wider regional security and defense planning, but that's really about it. So these Russian mixed signals, we judge Russia by its actions, not by its words. And I think domestically in Russia, this is a big setback for Vladimir Putin. He's getting more NATO on his border, not less. And he needs to come up with anecdotes to say that this is not a strategic defeat for him. So I think a lot of this is for domestic consumption in Russia, these Russian signals that we're seeing right now.
What does this mean for the relationship between Helsinki and Moscow going forward now that this move has been made on the chessboard?
Well, Finland has always had a kind of a two-pronged strategy in its management of relations with Russia. Defense and dialogue. So have a very strong defense posture for a small country, so you retain your independence, you retain your sovereignty, but also try to maintain good ties, keep the line for dialogue open, keep trade open. And Finland says, and indeed Sweden says, that they will keep that line of dialogue open when they join the NATO alliance, in an effort to try and talk Russia out some of the brutal aggression we have seen from Moscow this spring. Nevertheless, things are turning. I mean, when things have been grim and dark and tense in security terms, in military terms, between Finland and Moscow in the past, there has been a good trade relationship. So even when there's tension in the air with security and with military policy, there still might be some positives to talk about in trade policy. Finland has had one of the most significant trade relationships in the region with Russia. But of course now, with EU sanctions, Finland fully aligns with Western principles, with EU principles, and that trade relationship is also dissipating. So I think the trend is regressive and certainly not progressive right now.
So the fly in the ointment, if I can use that expression, is Turkey. What is the relationship between Ankara and Helsinki?
Well, Turkey is a very strategically important state between Europe and Asia Minor these days, and there is a good diplomatic dialogue. There is some sympathies within the Finnish political system for the Kurdish cause throughout that part of the world, throughout the Middle East. But some of the accusations are leveled at Finland and indeed Sweden that they are supporting terrorists or financing terrorists, I think are very, very overblown. We've seen this with President Erdogan before. He's tried to block other NATO initiatives. Just before NATO's 70th anniversary meeting in London, right at the end of 2019, he promised to block enhanced provisions for NATO's enhanced forward presence for the Baltic states and Poland if he didn't get more recognition from within the alliance. against the PKK, declaring them as terrorists. So he's tried this before. There has been diplomacy behind the scenes, and he has stepped down. There's also probably another game at play. Turkey, of course, as a NATO ally in the south, cares a lot about its regional security dynamics. Finland and Sweden entering NATO in the north would tilt the geopolitical balance more towards Northern Europe within NATO, and Erdogan doesn't want to be left behind with that. He still wants coverage from NATO as well in his region. So there are a number of balances that need to be struck here. There is still some diplomacy that needs to take place behind the scenes, but the view from Helsinki and the view from Stockholm right now is this is all very, very manageable and maybe in some way predictable. They were expecting a hiccup from somewhere, perhaps from Hungary, even though Hungary says it supports Finnish and Swedish NATO membership. We've had some murmurs from Croatia that seem to have dissipated now, and it is diplomacy with President Erdogan that is being put on the agenda right now, and diplomats here and throughout the alliance are working on it.
So it's likely to go through. A lot of talking perhaps needs to happen, and maybe even some things given to Erdogan, but likely that these two countries will be the two newest members of NATO quite soon.
Yeah, I think so. The way things look right now, at the moment, they have filed their applications for NATO membership, both Sweden and Finland. NATO will have its Madrid summit in around the middle of June this year. Both states will be formally invited to join the alliance at that summit. And from there, some estimates, the fast track estimate is 4 months or thereabout. The longer range estimate is 18 months. So we're looking between 4 to 18 months. But some states, there's some multiplicity within the alliance right now. Some states that just out of Tallinn, across very close to Finland, across the Gulf of Finland right now, that the Estonian Prime Minister has said that Estonia will approve Finland and Sweden's NATO membership without delay. And of course, that's not a surprise because Finnish and Swedish NATO membership is very, very good news too for the neighbouring Baltic states.
Let's assume worst case scenario. What could be the consequences for Turkey if it does veto Finland and Sweden?
Well, I don't think it comes to that. NATO is a consensus-based alliance, and this is what has allowed NATO to endure for so long. That consensus base, keeps creating interest for allies to stay in the game, to keep negotiating right to the end. And it gives the alliance a lot of renewal and a lot of durability over time. So I really don't think it will come to that. Turkey does not want to be isolated. I mean, it's looking at two very serious wars on both fronts, very, very fragile and unstable Syria still and the wider Middle East, but also across the Black Sea, we've got very, very intense fighting taking place between Russia and Ukraine. So Turkey needs NATO right now, and it does not want to be isolated. And I think that's what will push this forward and resolve matters.
Eoin McNamara, always great talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and your insights greatly appreciated. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
All right, that's Eoin McNamara talking to us from Helsinki about NATO membership for Finland and Sweden.